Wasn't Big out at California 3-4 weeks and Snoop never saw him, but it was a whole lot of love? Come on, man.
Not true, Snoop Doggy Doggy Dog. Snoop lying. That's what you should need to keep your name. Snoop lying, because you always lying.
First of all, Snoop wasn't even next to us when that happened. You know what I'm saying? Like, he bugging. He knew damn well it wasn't like that.
So Snoop was nowhere around?
No.
When Snoop Dogg starts spinning one of his wild stories, everybody leans in. He's got that voice, that vibe. And whether he's talking about Tupac, Biggie, or some wild night from back in the day, people hang on every word like it's gospel. But here's the twist. Insiders claim a lot of these so-called classic Snoop stories might be straight-up fiction. That's right. For years, people close to the game have whispered that Uncle Snoop's tales are often exaggerated, half-true, or just plain outrageous. And this isn't new. Snoop has been called out multiple times for serving up stories that don't quite add up. Fans say it's entertaining, but critics say he's rewriting history with a little too much imagination. The truth? Somewhere lost in the smoke. Because like they always say, there are three sides to every story. One person's version, the other person's version, and then the real truth hiding in the shadows. Now, normally when two people clash, maybe a third person steps in and clears the air. But what happens when that third person wasn't even really there?
Away from him and Nas right here, boom. Nas like, what's up, huh?
Or they only caught scraps of the story. That's when the facts start twisting and the truth turns into something else completely. And that's exactly what went down when Snoop Dogg started telling his version of an alleged face-off between Nas and Tupac, right in the middle of the legendary East Coast versus West Coast war. People couldn't believe their ears. Was Snoop exposing a secret moment or just creating one for the history books? To really understand this wild situation, we gotta spin the clock back a little. On Nas's second album, It Was Written, the opening track, The Message, had that infamous line, "Fake thug, no love, you get the slug, CB4 gusto." On paper, it didn't sound like it was aimed at anyone in particular, but somehow Tupac took it personal, real personal. And if you know Pac, you already know how it went down. Once he felt disrespected, it was game on. Pac wasn't the type to let anything slide. One line could flip into all-out war.
Made a record about me, and he was in New York, and nobody from New York is really, they talk it, man, but all them companies don't really hold it.
That tiny misunderstanding lit a fire, and suddenly Nas was on Pac's radar in the worst way possible. Just like that, Nas got thrown onto the same enemy list as Biggie, Puffy, and the entire Bad Boy crew. So by the time Tupac touched down in New York for the MTV Music Awards, the streets were buzzing with tension. It wasn't just music beef anymore. It felt like something bigger was about to explode, and everybody in hip-hop could feel it in the air. Now this is where Snoop jumps in with his wild version of the story. According to him, when Tupac rolled up with the whole Death Row squad, Nas didn't come solo. He came deep. Snoop claims Nas pulled up with nearly 100 Queens dudes, and the way he tells it, the scene looked like an army on standby. Snoop painted this picture like a movie. Pac is in full attack mode, shouting, cursing, throwing slick shots, clowning Nas in front of everybody. But here's the twist. While Pac is raging, Nas is just standing there cool as ice, not even flinching, with a wall of Queens soldiers around him.
But Nas didn't want none. But Nas had a with guns.
Right.
So listen to what I'm telling you.
Yeah.
By me saying he didn't want none didn't mean he didn't punk out. It mean he just didn't want to
go there.
Pac didn't even see them. I did, because I got a gangbang mentality. I seen them start circling it,
right,
putting their hands in their pockets while Pac is in this ear telling him, I made a song.
The way Snoop describes it, Nas had the power to shut Pac and the entire Death Row crew down right then and there. But instead of unleashing that chaos, Snoop says Nas made the unexpected move. He let it slide. He chose peace over war, walking away from what could have been a legendary street showdown. Snoop made it sound like Nas was the wise king holding all the power, while Pac was this reckless hothead who didn't even realize how close he was to getting crushed. In Snoop's version, Pac was wilding out and Nas was the calm one saving the day. But here's the jaw dropper. Snoop wasn't even there that night. His whole story was pure invention, like a Hollywood script. And the first person to call him out? None other than Napoleon, Pac's close brother-in-arms from the Outlaws who actually was there. Napoleon didn't hold back. He straight up said Snoop's story was fake from start to finish. No tense standoff, no Queen's Army ready to strike, no Pac screaming in Nas's face. According to him, that never happened. In reality, when Pac and Nas crossed paths, it was nothing like the chaos Snoop painted. There was no yelling, no clowning, no threats hanging in the air. Napoleon revealed it was the total opposite. The meeting was respectful. Pac and Nas talked man to man, face to face, with no crowd hype, no disrespect. Pac laid out his side of the misunderstanding, Nas broke down his, and instead of violence, they actually cleared the air right then and there, two rap giants squashing it quietly, while Snoop later turned it into a blockbuster-style showdown. Pac even took it a step further that night.
I also had to run in New York, right, at Bryant Park. Was Snoop there? Because I seen some Snoop interviews, and he said that he's seen everything.
To be honest, bro, I don't recall Snoop being there. And the situation didn't go down nothing the way Snoop said it.
He promised Nas that once he got back to LA, he was going to pull Nas's name out of any diss tracks where it had been mentioned. That was Pac's word, a peace offering straight from his mouth. But the tragedy, he never got the chance to follow through. Just weeks later, Pac was gone. His life cut short before that promise could ever be fulfilled. And that right there shows the truth. There was no explosive showdown the way Snoop made it sound. No Nas army surrounding death row, no Pac being reckless in front of the crowd. The real story was about two legends clearing the air, not clashing in the streets. Now, some might think Napoleon was only defending Pac when he shut down Snoop's version.
Pac wasn't cursing out Nas. We gonna keep it 100. You know what I mean? Pac wasn't disrespecting Nas at all. You know, I know Snoop said Pac punked Nas and then went to Snoop and said, you see how I got these New York dudes? None of that happened, bro. It was a mutual respect thing. When Pac and Nas met each other, it was nobody talking disrespect from both sides. Maybe the people behind Nas and the people behind Pac was mean mugging, saying certain things, but Pac and Nas handled it like real gentlemen, real, you know what I mean, real respect.
But here's the catch. Even Nas himself later confirmed it. Nas admitted, yeah, there was tension in the air, but it never played out the way Snoop described. Tupac never disrespected me to my face. We had a good conversation, squashed the beef, and walked away with mutual respect. So instead of chaos, the night was really about two giants in hip-hop finding common ground, while Snoop's retelling twisted it into a fake war story that never even happened. And here's the kicker. That wasn't the only tall tale Snoop has pushed over the years. Another favorite story he likes to tell is about Pac's time behind bars. According to Snoop, Pac was in serious danger while locked up, surrounded by problems on all sides. Snoop claims he was the one who personally convinced Suge Knight to step in, bail Pac out, and basically save his life. Sounds like a hero story, right? But once again, Napoleon from the Outlaws wasn't buying it, and he flat out called Snoop's version fake. Napoleon explained that Pac wasn't in danger at all during his prison stretch.
The great combo, man. He was like, you know, he explained that he thought I was dissing him, and he thought, and I, on the song The Message, you know what I'm saying? He thought I was dissing him, and I wasn't even thinking about when I wrote that record. Just right, it was just going. You know what I'm saying? It was just going, hey, you know, just coming. So he thought that, and then I was like, well, I heard you was coming at me. I said, no, it was about you, but I heard you was coming at me, you know, back and...
In fact, it was the opposite. People in prison respected Pac. He was making friends, snapping pictures with inmates, holding his own, and carrying himself like the star he already was. Napoleon even broke it down further. During their visits, Pac never once complained about being threatened or feeling unsafe. Did Pac want out of prison? Of course. Who wouldn't? But Napoleon made it crystal clear. It had nothing to do with Snoop whispering in Suga's ear or playing savior. That whole Snoop the hero storyline just doesn't match reality. And Snoop's habit of rewriting hip-hop history doesn't just stop with Tupac, it stretches over to Biggie too. For years, Snoop has pushed this image that he and Biggie were tight, almost like brothers, bonded by mutual love and respect. He's painted himself as someone Biggie admired, a friend caught in the middle of the storm between East and West. But here's the twist. Not everybody buys that version. Gene Deal, Puff Daddy's former bodyguard who had a front row seat to everything back then, told a very different story. In an interview on the Art of Dialogue podcast, Gene dropped a bombshell. Biggie didn't mess with Snoop like that at all. He flat out said Biggie had no respect for Snoop and wasn't fond of him in the slightest. And Gene didn't stop there. He even questioned why, if Snoop was supposedly so close to both Pac and Biggie, we never really saw that closeness until after both men were gone. According to him, Snoop's stories about being the bridge between East and West are just too convenient. like polished narratives designed to make Snoop look like the wise peacemaker in a war he wasn't really mediating. The truth, at least from Gene's side, is way messier. He insists Biggie wasn't cozy with Snoop, Pac wasn't relying on Snoop for protection, and all these tales Snoop tells today just make him look good in the media. The reality, things weren't nearly as friendly or smooth as Snoop makes them sound.
Tupac having issues when he was in prison? Because I know Snoop, he always say that he was hearing bad things, so he told Suge Knight to get him out.
And according to Gene, that so-called bond Snoop claims with Biggie didn't even exist until after Pac was gone. Before that, Gene says, it was never the brotherly love story Snoop sells today. He even threw shade asking, wasn't Big out in California 3-4 weeks and Snoop never saw him? Snoop never came and smoked with him? Never came and ate with him? But now all of a sudden, there was all this love? Come on, man. Of course, Snoop has his own carefully polished version of events after Biggie's tragic death in 1997. He's often gone on record praising Big and talking about how much respect he had for him. In fact, during a 2018 Rap Radar interview, Snoop dropped what he described as a powerful story about closure. According to him, sometime after Pac's death, he ran into Biggie in Atlanta. Snoop claimed it was an emotional heart-to-heart moment.
False narrative that I think Snoop was pushing. You know what I mean? Pac, for a fact, he wasn't really, he had a lot of, like, he used to send us pictures, and his pictures on the internet where he was taking pictures with New York dudes up in Clinton. I guess people, they like to say that so then they can vouch for some other rumors that's being spread about Pac to try to put dirt on his name. You know what I mean? So
just the two of them, away from all the noise. He says Biggie opened up, confessing that he loved Pac, that he never wanted him dead, and that things had spiraled out of control. According to Snoop, Big admitted he'd made mistakes, said things he shouldn't have, and even apologized like a man. Snoop painted it as a deep, genuine moment, almost like the final chapter of the East verses. West Nightmare finally coming to a peaceful end. Snoop even doubled down, saying he never fully blamed Big for the Dog Pound's infamous New York video shoot getting shot up in Brooklyn. Back then, Death Row assumed Biggie's crew had something to do with it, but no one got hit, so they let it go. In Snoop's version, once Big apologized in Atlanta, that was it. The beef was squashed, hands were shaken, and from that point on, they were cool again. But here's where Gene Deal throws ice-cold water on that story. When asked directly if that Atlanta meeting really went down the way Snoop described, Gene didn't confirm it. Instead, he brushed it off, saying he couldn't vouch for it because he wasn't even there, which leaves a giant question mark hanging in the air. Was this another one of Snoop's legendary movie-style rewrites, or did that moment of closure actually happen? Still, Gene couldn't help but raise an eyebrow at Snoop's whole Atlanta story.
Of us weekly, I can't recall him saying anything where he felt like he was in danger. You know what I mean? Like, not one time. He wanted to get the hell out of there. You know what I mean? He wasn't like, hey, I'm good. Y'all just go do your thing and leave me alone. No, he wanted to come home, but he definitely wasn't having any issues.
Something about it just didn't add up. He broke it down like this. If Snoop was supposedly close enough to hang out one-on-one with Biggie in Atlanta, why didn't we ever see him around Big when Big was actually in Los Angeles? Gene put it plain. I can see you in Atlanta, but I can't see you in California, in my own hometown. So you're saying you're so gangster that you can roll up to Biggie's hotel room solo in Atlanta, but when he's right there in Cali, you can't link up? All right then. That sharp question left Snoop's version of events hanging by a thread. To Gene, it didn't sound like the story of two brothers finding closure. It sounded like Snoop rewriting the past to make himself look bigger, bolder, and closer to the legends than he really was. And here's where the two-faced Snoop angle really starts clicking for a lot of people. Because Gene Deal isn't the only one who ever accused Snoop of being fake with his stories. Tupac himself actually called him out on it while he was still alive. What most people don't realize is that by the time Pac died, he and Snoop weren't even cool anymore. Their bond had completely fallen apart. According to insiders who were right there in the mix, jealousy was a big part of the problem. Before Pac signed to Death Row, Snoop was the star of the label, Suge Knight's golden boy, the crown jewel of West Coast rap, the face everybody looked to. But the second Pac walked out of prison and joined Death Row, the entire energy shifted overnight. Pac came in with this unstoppable, larger-than-life presence. He was recording like crazy, dropping music nonstop, and instantly became the center of attention. Suddenly, the spotlight wasn't just on Snoop anymore. It was all about Pac, and people close to the situation say Snoop didn't handle that shift too well. What had once been his stage, his shine, his throne, now belonged to Pac. And behind the scenes, that tension started eating away at their friendship. That jealousy didn't just sit in the background. It started creeping into little moments until it finally exploded. The breaking point came after Pac dropped his infamous diss track, Hit 'Em Up. By then, the war between Death Row and Bad Boy had reached its peak. Lines were drawn, tension was at a boiling point, and everyone had to pick a side. In 1996, when the Death Row camp hit New York for the MTV Video Music Awards, Snoop's behavior raised serious eyebrows. First, he skipped out on a scheduled Saturday Night Live rehearsal with Pac, already a bad look. But what came next was the real dagger. Snoop went live on a New York radio station and told the world, "I got nothing but love for Biggie and Puffy." Now, you gotta understand how deep the beef ran at that time. For Snoop to say that, especially while standing in New York, the enemy's home turf, was like spitting in Pac's face. And it wasn't just the words. What really burned Pac was the fact that only days earlier, Snoop had been right there in the studio, laying down diss tracks aimed at Biggie and Puff. One minute he's on wax, throwing shots with Pac, the next he's on the radio smiling, showing love. To Pac, that wasn't just a switch up, that was betrayal. Sadly, Pac never got the chance to sit down with Snoop and clear the air. Before any real reconciliation could happen, Pac was gunned down in Vegas. After his death, Snoop tried to explain himself in interviews. He claimed Pac just didn't understand him, that he never had hate for Biggie, never wanted to see Big, and that Pac couldn't see it. But for a lot of people, that excuse didn't cut it. To them, it stood as one of Snoop's biggest betrayals. And here's where things take an even darker turn. When people talk about Pac's murder, one name always comes up, Big Dre from the Southside Compton Crips. Now, most point the finger at Orlando Anderson as the trigger man, but plenty of insiders have long believed Big Dre was the real shooter that night in Vegas. Here's the crazy part. What did Snoop do after Pac was gone? He worked with him. Not long after Pac's death, Big Dre launched his own label, Runoff Records, and dropped a mixtape called Hard White. Out of nowhere, this tape had major features. Warren G, MC8, and yes, Snoop Dogg himself. When word got out, it set the streets on fire. People started asking the obvious questions. Where did Big Dre suddenly get that kind of money to pull those names? And more importantly, why would Snoop of all people choose to work with the man rumored to be tied to Pac's murder? To Pac's fans, that spoke volumes. It looked like Snoop was showing his true colors, that maybe Pac's death didn't mean as much to him as he wanted the world to believe. Even Suge Knight himself called it out, revealing that Snoop linked up with Big Dre after Pac was killed, and Suge didn't mince words. For you to be working with somebody that was in the car with Keith D when Tupac got shot, that's crazy, man. But then the real story eventually came out, and it was nothing like the version Snoop had painted. Instead of him brokering peace like some kind of street diplomat, the Bloods in that neighborhood weren't having it. They started wilding out, throwing bottles at Snoop's trailer, trying to intimidate him. And while Snoop was tucked away inside, it wasn't him who stepped up to calm the storm. It was somebody else, Spice One. Spice, a certified pioneer in gangster rap, got a call from one of his OG homies who told him things were about to go left. Bloods were outside Snoop's trailer, causing chaos. So Spice One pulled up, and the second the Bloods saw him, the vibe shifted. They knew exactly who he was, and that recognition alone brought the energy down a notch. Spice didn't come in trying to act tough or start barking orders. He kept it cool, talked to them, and reminded them that if things popped off, the cops would come heavy and everybody would catch a case. Nobody wanted that heat, so the Bloods agreed to chill. They slid around the corner, sparked some weed, and kicked back until the police made a quick sweep and left. Once the coast was clear, Spice circled back to Snoop's trailer. They smoked, chopped it up, and the whole time, Snoop had no clue how close things had come to exploding just outside. So while Snoop still gets his flowers and respect in hip-hop, stories like this put a serious dent in his peacemaker image. And that's why we dig into these stories, to uncover what really went down behind the scenes. If you're rocking with this breakdown, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss the real stories the industry doesn't want you to know.